Right, the subject of this discussion is who's into ancestry.co.uk. I've become quite interested in my family tree due to the fact that I found that there was someone living locally who had the same nickname as me. When I say locally, I say within the Norwich area, because I live in a town called Norwich in Cheshire, you see. And from the age of 11 upward, I was always referred to by the nickname Dinky Dalton. So sometimes it was abbreviated to Dinks. If you look on my Facebook page, you can see the name Dinks in brackets. I preferred Dinks because it sounds more sophisticated, actually. But people have never called me Dinky or Dinks for donkey's years. It's not a nickname that stuck me all life. It was something that I was called that when I was younger, really. But it's not really a nickname that stuck. But I have recently found out that there was there was someone living locally who was also nicknamed Dinky Dalton. They had a scooter. They lived at Lostock. The way I've seen this name mentioned on in a Facebook group somewhere, and it was mentioned that they lived at Lostock. Well, I never lived at Lostock. I was brought up in a village called Barnton, and I moved out of there 7 years ago. But this other Dinky Dalton, he lived in the village of Lost. I've now found out a bit more about him. I went to a football match at Lostock, and I mentioned to the women serving the refreshments that my grandmother was Alice Dalton and she lived down Renshaw Street, Lostock. And suddenly, they mentioned this Dinky Dalton because I mentioned Alice Dalton. They mentioned Dinky Dalton, this Dinky Dalton who had a scooter, and he had a sister called Dorothy. My dad was called Arthur Dalton. My dad's name was Arthur Dalton, and he had a sister called Dorothy. But this is a different family that we're talking about here. And I went home and went on a Lostock Greyland group on Facebook and did a bit of research regarding this. And I actually found out that the address where this other Dinky Dalton and his family lived. It's actually not far from my auntie's grave where he used to live, but apparently he's dead now as well. I learned a bit of information and I learned the names of his parents. His name was Raymond. He had two sisters called Yvonne and Dorothy. So I've learned a bit about this other Dinky Dalton that lived locally. But it's fascinating to know that I wasn't the only Dinky Dalton that lived in the Norwich area. In fact, it's possible that my nickname actually originated from his, because if there was someone living called Dinky Dalton living in the Norwich area, kids I went to school with might have picked up the name from somewhere and started applying it to me. The theory I always had as to where Dinky or Dinks came from, I always thought it came from a cartoon. There was a cartoon series called Dinky Dog that was on around about the same time in Britain. It was an American cartoon series, and it was shown in Britain on a regular basis around about the time when I first went up to high school. It says the story of a dog named Dinky. He was the cutest little doggy in the neighbourhood, and so we brought him home, this dinky doggy. And he grew and grew and grew and grew, and he isn't a dinky doggy anymore. No, no, he isn't a dinky dog. Anyway, that's enough of that. I always assumed that my nickname, Dinky Dalton, came from that. But it might not definitely have originated from that. It could have had, it was possible it could have had other origins. I mean, there was another cartoon series called Huckleberry Hound that was first shown on TV in the 50s, and in a couple of episodes of it, there was actually a character actually called Dinky Dalton. He's one of the notorious Dalton brothers. So, and once again, if there was already another Dinky Dalton living in the Norwich area, so one or two kids might have picked up the name from somewhere and started applying it to me. So, there's all sorts of possibilities as to where your nickname originates from, but there was another Dinky Dalton living in the Norwich area anyway, and I think probably they were probably related to my grandfather, because I think my mother lived at Lostock. But her husband, who she married, I think he also came from Lostock. I think his family came from Lostock, and they got to know each other because he pulled her out of the river when she was drowning, or a lake or a stream or whatever it was. He pulled, to be more precise, he pulled her out of the water when she was drowning, and he got an award for saving the girl's life, and they started courting, and they eventually got married when she was 19. And her name was Alice Dalton. But I think his family came from Lostock, so it's quite feasible that there could have been someone who was related to him in some way, who lived at Lostock, whose name was, his nickname was Dinky Dalton. Apparently the real name was Raymond. But what I'm getting into, it's made me think about joining Ancestry.co.uk. You know, if I could join Ancestry.co.uk, I can maybe throw some light on this matter, and that's what the topic of this discussion is. Has anybody else found Ancestry.co.uk to be helpful? Has anybody found it useful in building up a family tree? You know, and for finding out who your ancestors were, how far your family can be traced back to until. Apparently, my name Dalton it is quite a common name in America. But because this other Dinky Dalton came from Lostock, I'm nearly sure they would have been related to my grandfather, because I think that's where his family came from, Lostock. So and it's just one of those coincidences, isn't it? It never occurred to me at all that I wasn't the only Dinky Dalton living in the Norwich area. The thought never occurred to me. But it's a small world, and this is all. These things are all just part of life, aren't they?